Good day, everybody. Welcome to your program Goya's Brush. Today we will talk about one of the most recognized painters of the time. Today we meet with two fellow Insurgentes in University Shola campus to analyze Goya's life. Erika, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Oziel, good afternoon.
Hello, everyone.
It's a pleasure to have you in the program.
Goya was born in 1746 in a humble Spanish family. His father, who was a blacksmith and craftsman, installed in Goya as a child the desire to become an artist. However, due to the family's economic situation, Francisco found himself in the need to work from a young age. This prevents him from beginning his studies at the Art Academy until he was 13, which by the standards of his time, that was already a very advanced age that put him at a disadvantage.
Goya really thought to not waste time. I feel that I used those years in a good way, meeting the people and gaining experience from their failed attempts. Thanks to those people who taught him where to go and learn a little more about art.
Yeah.
It is difficult to assume questions about his personal life, especially when he was a child. There are no longer so many records of his personal life before he became a famous person, before he returned to Italy.
Good point of view, it does not make for the creator that you know that he has lived, but when a subjective opinion is given, it can be misunderstood.
This is why in this program, we are dedicated to giving points of view. We don't want to pretend that we really knew the life of this man, but it is so interesting that we easily try to understand how an artist comes to express himself in this sinister life.
However, Francisco made an effort to learn everything he had at the disposal at the time. His only objective was to obtain a scholarship to be able to continue his artistic studies in Italy. From his enrolled in drawing and painting competition for young people, sadly, he was unable to win any to obtain a scholarship. Late with his saving, he decided to travel on his own. There he learned from the great master of the Renaissance, analyzing the works that were found in museums.
Since he was a child, he showed a passion for art, especially that of the cradle of the Renaissance Italy. Despite how strict they were, there are academies at that time which made anyone doubt his talent. So much so that with paintings with which he participated in different contexts, despite being very complex, they failed to win. However, it did not stop him from forcing his dream in his audience.
The painting of Christ, I know, I'm getting ahead of myself, but he already had this idea of creating paintings with religious them in order to fit the vision of the church and reality.
I imagine that it was horrible to always have to do sacred art with his hands tied. If they did not do the same thing, that others could cause the ravages of the Holy Inquisition. His career took shape once he returned to Spain and managed to work for the church, which was clearly the most powerful institution of the time. He was finally able to enter the Royal Academy of Art when wealthy families offered him a job, giving him status and some fame. During this time, Goya suffers from a mysterious disease, which although in this time it was not correctly diagnosed, if it was documented. Today, there are not several theories, including lead poisoning, which a disease caused by exposure to lead intoxication. This led to problems relating to people, really very serious problems.
He realized that the only way to stand out as an artist was working for the church or royalty.
I think that working from a royalty and the church gave your name as an artist. The facts of working from they said a lot about you and you could be recognized at the time.
At that moment, he found in painting a unique way of expressing himself through his imagination. One of his great hobbies was visiting asylums. That's why there are several works that show what he saw in his visits. At the same time, in his native country, Spain, will experience a very difficult situation due to the Holy Inquisition. On several occasions, due to some of his works, he got into trouble with the Catholic Church. However, Francisco was saved from being convicted due to his status as a royal court painter. Inspired by what was happening in Spain, he started a series of engravings that he titled Los Caprichos.
Don't you think that visiting asylums has affected a lot psychologically?
Taking the context of the time, mental illnesses were not treated as such, but rather as evil demons, which is why they now call asylums. Back then were the probably place full of inhuman treatments.
Thanks to Los Caprichos, the Inquisition focused on him and more with the naked monjas, and began his social criticism. This makes Goya a problem from the church, coming to think that it was a huge problem from his ideology.
Don't you think he weren't really friends with the company and he only earned them to get fame?
Yes, he put symbols that only he understood to make fun of royalty.
Late when Spain was invaded by Napoleon's French troops, he made another series of more grotesque engraving titles, Los Desastres de la Guerra, when the stark images showing the inhumane ways in which French soldiers murdered and raped Spain's civilians. Some of his most famous and criticized work were on May 2 and May 3, which portray execution at the end of his life, the monster of the imagination as he himself killed them, invaded his mind and became the protagonist of the last work, which he performed during his old age and away from a public life in his modest house known as La Quinta del Sordo.
They tell of an alleged betrayal of Spain. France broke democracy and overthrew the church, and that Goya liked I at my time if I had joined France to make a change to my country. He even made portraits of Napoleon's brothers. I think that the time of war for Goya must have been especially difficult since his situation was very contradictory. On the one hand, he saw his country being assassinated and outraged, and on the other hand, he also saw his enemy fall. The Holy Inquisition, which as an individual situated him.
The Goya works of May 2 and 3 were actually done a few years after the French invasion of Spain, since Goya was prosecuted for his alleged treason. This forced the crowd to prosecute Goya and ask him to prove his homeland, creating these two works.
The engravings of the war were hidden so that they wouldn't not be a problem with the church and royalty. He could not yet painting or engrave freely, so it was important that he keeps his expression somewhat hidden. In the so-called black paintings, we can see macabre and unhinged scene that explore themes such as witches, witchcraft, spiritings, and pagan mythologies. It was never his intention to show or sell them to the public. He made them to express the characters that harassed him that day and night, characters from whom he could not escape. There are very important paintings since they show us that was going through the mind of him, a man traumatized by the horrors of war and the disease that he suffered.
It is until the last years of his life that Goya, away from public life, can really show what goes on in his head and not work for others. Yet what was going on in his head was what torments him, not something that will bring him pleasure, but painting his was the only way that he could express his trauma. He was even willing to give up his fame and riches in order to paint what he wanted. The word entitled El Aquelarre belongs to Goya's black paintings. The image shows a ritual referring to the devil represented by a god, which stands out in the center above all other characters. The people around him represent women who at the time were accused of being witches and condemned to the stake by the Holy Inquisition. They are offered infants to the devil in exchange for eternal beauty. In the back of the wall, apparently calm women with youthful appearance and the bodies of children are shown at their feet.
It was a strange way that changed, the sudden change, the way in which he expressed, say a lot about how we interpret it. Yes, I think was it something the stretching from him imagine began sick and defeat. The fact of being twice close to death feel like a reborn. First thing, but as your emotion overflowed in your paintings, as Erika said, almost when he died, he could express himself as he wanted, if it helped him enough. The Colossus is one Goya's most emblematic painting, representing the war in Spain and atrocities. Even that led Goya to capture this work. Something of religious proportion looms on the horizon, with a defensive posture and ready to attack with the fury of thousands of men. People not notice when pressure of his being of enormous proportion. That is something unbelievable. People fled from something great that them, something that can end your life in a couple of seconds. The representative of war is made by that giant on the horizon, and the pain of horror is represented by the face of a person.
I can imagine Goya observing those scenes of war, executions, rapes. Imagine being a scene of all debauchery, and that you cannot hear well that is happening. See the looks of horror from the people, and that the only thing what his mind could do is to record that suffering in the memory of each of those people, as he would not have the need to unload all those emotions through clear painting. Saturn devouring a son. Kronos, or Saturn for Roman mythology, was a god with whom many artists felt identified, since he was a clear representation of fear and frustration. The history as follows. Saturn cut off his father's genitals. Sometimes later, his mother told him that one of his sons was going to defeat it as he defeated his father. Saturn, full of fear, could only think of eating his children. And that is how several artists have represented this scene. Most of them represented Saturn with that line of God, with clear backgrounds and full of clouds, a typical scene from Olympus. Goya breaks everything, is shamed, and draws as entity with a look full of fear. Squeezing tightly this little vein, whose head is missing. On a completely dark background, he can really realize all that suffering that he was going through.
During his life, Goya achieved fame and riches, but as a Norman that ceased to matter to him, since money could not make him forget the sad moments that he lived. In 1824, he and his only daughter moved to Bordeaux, a city in France, as exiles from the war, so that Francisco could live his last years, and in the year 1828 died.
Goya had a great talent, and we can observe it in the artistic legacy that he left, and thanks to all of this, he is considered the last of the old masters of art and the first of the new great masters.
Well, thanks for joining us in the first edition of the Goya's Brush. Erika, thanks for being here.
See you later.
Oziel, thanks for coming.
Goodbye,
So,
everybody.
see you in the next edition of the Goya's Brush. Bye.
Bye.
I don't know you. I don't know you.
Francisco se esforzaba mucho para
I don't mind you.
A su regreso de Italia, una cara rara.
Honestly, I'm fine with keeping my trust with you. It's time to walk my shoes. It's
mucho. Pienso yo que trabajar para la iglesia o la realeza, tener un hombre como Cristo.
where you laid and you said, I don't know.
¿Cómo moviste el pie?
Would it show on my face and remind you?
A su regreso de Italia, una cara rara.